Most people could not point to Cabo Verde on a map, yet this tiny Atlantic nation has just done what almost nobody thought possible. In its first World Cup, it held European champion Spain to a goalless draw. Then it fought former champion Uruguay to a 2-2 tie. With one group match left, the Blue Sharks are still alive. But to understand why this matters, we have to travel far beyond football. Cabo Verde arrived at the 2026 World Cup as one of the smallest countries ever to qualify. There were no famous domestic superclubs, no population of tens of millions, and no history at this tournament. What they did have was discipline, belief, and a team prepared to suffer together. Against Spain, they survived wave after wave and left with a point. Against Uruguay, they scored twice, fought back, and earned another. 2 matches, 2 world football powers, 2 draws that changed the way the tournament saw them. Cabo Verde lies about 620 kilometers west of Senegal. 10 volcanic islands rise from the Atlantic Ocean, and 9 of them are inhabited. The country sits closer to the open sea than to the busy centers of continental Africa. For centuries, that distance shaped almost everything: trade, migration, music, family life, and football. Its location made the islands a meeting point between Africa, Europe, and the wider Atlantic world. Together, the islands cover only about 4,000 square kilometers. Just over 500,000 people live in the country. That is fewer people than many single cities around the world. But Cabo Verde is not one uniform place. Each island has its own landscape, rhythm, and personality. Some are dry and almost lunar. Others are cut by steep green valleys and mountain roads. The islands were uninhabited before Portuguese settlement began in the 15th century. Their position later connected them to Atlantic trade, migration, and a painful colonial history. After centuries under Portuguese rule, Cabo Verde became independent on the 5th of July, 1975. The modern country grew from that complicated past with a strong identity of its own. It is an African nation, an Atlantic nation, and a culture shaped by movement, distance, and return. Praia, the capital, stands on the island of Santiago. Mindelo, on São Paulo Vicente, became one of the great cultural centers of the archipelago. One of Cabo Verde's most famous traditions is Morna. It combines voice, poetry, string instruments, and a deep feeling of longing often connected to separation and the sea. In 2019, UNESCO added Morna to its representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Long before the football team reached the world stage, the music of these islands was already carrying their story across oceans. Football carried that same story of movement. Many players built careers abroad, but returned to represent the islands in blue. Under coach Bubista, Cabo Verde topped its African qualifying group ahead of Cameroon. A run of 5 straight victories transformed belief into something real. Then a 3-0 win over Eswatini confirmed the country's first World Cup qualification. For a nation of just over 500,000 people, the moment was enormous. Cabo Verde was no longer watching the world's biggest tournament from a distance. It was going there. The first opponent was Spain, the European champion. Spain controlled the ball and recorded 27 attempts at goal. Again and again, Cabo Verde dropped into shape, blocked the central spaces, and forced Spain to try one more pass. Behind the defense stood 40-year-old goalkeeper Vozina. He and the players in front of him refused to break. When the final whistle arrived, the scoreboard still read 0-0. For Spain, it was frustration. For Cabo Verde, it was the first World Cup point in the country's history. 6 days later came Uruguay, a 2-time world champion. Cabo Verde did not approach the match like a team satisfied with survival. In the 21st minute, Kevin Pena stepped up from more than 30 meters. His direct free kick became Cabo Verde's first goal at a World Cup. Uruguay responded and turned the score around before halftime. Many debutants would have collapsed under the pressure. Cabo Verde did not. Substitute copyright Leo Varela punished a defensive mistake and made it 2-2. The Blue Sharks continued attacking until the end, and another historic point was theirs. At home and across communities far beyond the islands, every match became a national event. A country divided by stretches of ocean suddenly shared one screen and one dream. The team's nickname, the Blue Sharks, could hardly fit better. This is a nation whose history, economy, music, and daily life have always been tied to the sea. Fogo rises around an active volcano. Santo Antão is famous for dramatic valleys and steep terrain. Sal and Boa Vista open onto beaches and powerful Atlantic winds. 10 islands can feel like 10 different worlds, but football has given them one global voice. After 2 matches, Spain leads the group with 4 points. Cabo Verde and Uruguay each have 2, while Saudi Arabia has 1. The final group match against Saudi Arabia will decide what comes next. A victory would guarantee Cabo Verde a place in the knockout stage. But whatever happens, this team has already achieved something larger than a table can show. It has made millions of people search for the islands, learn their name, and understand their story. World Cups are usually remembered for giants. The teams with famous leagues, enormous budgets, and generations of tournament history. But every World Cup needs a story that reminds us why the game belongs to everyone. Cabo Verde entered the tournament as a tiny dot in the Atlantic. It now stands as one of the biggest stories of 2026. The map does not measure ambition. This is beyond the map. Hidden places, true stories, and global facts. Subscribe, and join us as we discover the next country.